Kneel before Zod. Yes, by that intro, if you haven't guessed already, I am reviewing Superman 2, directed by Richard Donner and Richard Lester, and stars Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, Gene Hackman, and Terence Stamp. Now, the whole story with this is that in the beginning of Superman, we see these three criminals being sentenced into the Phantom Zone. These three criminals ends up being General Zod, Ursa, and Nod. And these people are ruthless, they're killers. They will destroy everyone on Krypton if they do not send these people away. So they get sent away out of the planet. Of course, the planet explodes. So towards the end of the movie, when Lex Luthor sends 2 missiles towards different parts of the country of the USA, Superman reroutes one of them to outer space, and that missile explodes there, only to release Zod, Ursa, and Nod from the Phantom Zone. And when they find out about Earth, they go there and they try to conquer it because they find out that they have superpowers just like Superman, but then they soon learn of Superman's presence here and learn that Superman is the son of Jor-El, who sentenced them to the Phantom Zone, so they want revenge, and that's the plot. Now, first let me get out of the way the acting. The acting's all great. You know, nothing really much to say there, except one thing I gotta mention here is Gene Hackman. I believe that his character was completely useless in this movie. He was just there to be Lex Luthor and just to have Lex Luthor there. He progressed the story a teeny bit, telling Zod where the Fortress of Solitude is, but that's about it. Now, the thing that really annoyed me about him in this movie was most of his dialogue was him talking in the third person, telling Zod how great of a criminal he is on this earth. So Zod would threaten him, saying he would kill him because he's no further use to him, and then Luthor would reply, "Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal of our age!" And he would do this throughout the whole entire movie. It's annoying. You know, like, it's okay if you do it maybe once or twice, but several times, that's ridiculous. Now, I am aware that there are 2 versions of this movie. There's the theatrical and the Richard Donner cut, and the whole thing with the 2 directors is that halfway through the production of the film and the shooting of the film, Richard Donner got fired because I believe that the studio didn't like the direction he was going with the movie, so they hired Lester and he finished the rest of the movie, and that's kind of why, that's where the cheesiness kind of comes from that you might notice. I hate the cheesiness in the movie, and that's why I didn't like this movie as much as I liked Superman, but now that I have seen the Richard Donner cut for the first time recently, I so much prefer it. It gets to the point faster. There are completely different scenes from the theatrical in this cut that's actually really much better. I love the scene of how Lois finds out that Clark is Superman in the Donner cut more than I do in the theatrical. Now, also with the endings, they're completely different. The theatrical version has the infamous Superman kissing Lois and her memory gets erased of her knowing that he's Superman. Now, in the Donner cut, he goes backwards with the Earth again, and you know, it's not really all that much better, but it's a little bit better and more believable than I'd say a memory erased kiss. I mean, how does that work with Superman? I didn't know he had that power. So it's just more, it's more believable, I think, if we're all going backwards, even though it's really not that much, but by a teeny amount it is. The only problem I have with that ending is that the bar scene that happens in the middle of the movie after Clark loses his powers, him and Lois go to this bar and this guy tries to hit on Lois and Clark doesn't like that, and so he's being who he is, he tries to fight him and he gets his butt handed to him. Now in the theatrical cut this is much better because at the end, he goes back and he gets revenge on that guy and shows him who's boss. And it makes much more sense because everyone knows who he is. But in the Donner cut, because Superman turns the world backwards and then forwards again, and he goes back in time, that means Lois and Clark never ever went to that bar because he never gave up his powers. So no one knows who he is in that bar. He just walks in, he's just a casual person. It doesn't really have any sense because the people in the movie don't know who each other are, but we do. It's just like a little inconsistency there because I feel like it's more it's more enjoyable to know that all these people know each other instead of him just going to this random bar he's never been before, or maybe he has. This guy still doesn't know who Clark is, so it just doesn't make any sense. It makes that scene pointless to show. But I know it is still fun to see how he teaches a guy a lesson. I really liked the villains, first off. You know, I mentioned before, the acting's great all around, especially Zod, Ursa, Non. Really like those guys, and I feel like they're so much more threatening than Lex Luthor was in the first film, even though Gene Hackman was great. I'm glad that they have a different villain and one that's really threatening to Earth, and I just love the way they look at us as humans. They look at us almost like we look at bugs. You know, they're so easy to squash. But anyway, I really like the story. I love the situation with Superman deciding to give up his powers for Lois, and you know, he's talking to Jor-El and he's saying, you know, I've done a lot for these people. I want something for me for a change. Why couldn't they still be together with his powers? Worse than Lois and Clark. But anyway, the one thing I do love in that scene though is when Superman is, I don't know if it's in the theatrical cut as well, at least in the Donner cut, is that when Superman lets go of his powers, at the same time Lois is watching and Jor-El just looks up. He looks at her like the cold look he gives Lois. Oh my god, it's so dramatic, and I'm like, ooh, Lois, look what you've done, you know? But anyway, I still have my problems with people still ignoring Clark, but overall, both versions are really enjoyable. I really do prefer Richard Donner's version because it takes itself more seriously. It doesn't have any of those cheesy tropes that the theatrical cut has. I like the way that it's edited a little bit better in Donner's version, except for, of course, the bar scene at the end. It just doesn't make any sense with the world going backwards. But everything else is really great. Let me give the theatrical cut version a 4-star rating. Now, I know that I do have still some problems with it, but it is so enjoyable that those things are really small. I really love that film, but I have to give it a star off because of the cheesy stuff in it, and some things just work better in the Donner cut, like just actual scenes that are completely different, and the way they're arranged just better. For the Donner cut, I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I wanted to give it 5, but there's just still, you know, the thing with Lex Luthor, and I'm still not a fan of the world turning backwards and then forwards. Just doesn't make any sense still, and the inconsistency with the whole bar thing. But anyway, I really still enjoy the film much more with the Donner version. I really highly suggest you check it out if you haven't seen the Donner version. It's so much more serious and still fun and playful, but it takes itself much more serious. Doesn't have any of those stupid parts that you might have seen in the theatrical version. So yeah, so I want to let people know that I won't get a chance to review 3 and 4, but I will get a chance to review Superman Returns because it's the last relevant Superman movie, and I feel like that's really important along with 1 and 2 because those are the ones that people mostly talk about. People talk about 3 and 4, but not in a good light. Even though Superman Returns isn't in a really fantastic light either, it's the last recent Superman movie before Man of Steel, so I feel like it's important to address that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, remember to always keep it real, and I will see you for Superman Returns shortly.